We are thrilled to be here with you today. We've got a great presentation planned for you, discussing the opportunities of securing edge devices with post-quantum cryptography. My name is Meg Gleason. I am the head of user experience and product adoption here at QSecure. And at QSecure, our charge is to bring post-quantum cybersecurity to government and enterprise. And we have a specific cybersecurity solution that leverages today's technology to bring post-quantum protection to all endpoints in the network, including edge devices, which we'll talk about a little bit later in today's presentation. Quantum computers will enable compute power that today we can only dream of, and it holds great potential for many industries, but it also provides a platform for bad actors to disrupt much of the technology our digital society relies on, stealing critical data and causing great harm. And in this sense, we see quantum computers as an existential threat to our way of life here in the United States. And it is vital that we help our federal agencies and enterprises begin preparing now, since quantum computers have the power to crack today's current encryption standards. And our goal today here is to shed some light on the quantum computing threat and what it holds for our national security and way of life, but also to highlight the opportunity for you to take action today to protect the critical data that matters to you and your customers. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please do feel free to type in your questions and contact information in the Q&A section here in Zoom, or send us an email to pete@qsecure.com and we'll respond quickly. You can also always reach us and visit us on our site, qsecure.com. We will also be making this presentation available on a per request basis. And if you'd like a recording of the presentation, please do reach out. We'll have the information at the end of the presentation. So let's kick things off. Next slide, please. We've got a wonderful set of presenters for you today. We're very excited to have with us Dr. John DeRosa. He is a principal program manager at Amazon Web Services. He joined Amazon in 2021 as the Army's senior fellow. And prior to Amazon, he served for 30 years as a soldier, officer, and civilian in the Department of Defense. He's a graduate of the National War College and holds a PhD from George Mason University. Thanks so much for being with us today, John. We've also got Pete Ford, as we like to call him, Shadow. He's the head of QSecure's federal operations. Prior to joining the team, Pete was a defense industry executive at Northrop Grumman and Raytheon. His last job in the military was as a visiting scientist professional at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and before that, as an F-15C single-seat fighter pilot for our Air Force. We've also got Garrison Buss. He is the current serving Chief Strategy Officer here at QSecure. He leads business development and end-to-end go-to-market from the top of the funnel through execution. Garrison obtained his PhD from Stanford and has gone on to hold several C-level positions at a variety of startups and is a general partner at Superposition Venture Capital. Let's get started with a little bit of background. Next slide, please. The global investment for bringing about a quantum computer is upwards of $100 billion. Quantum computers present incredible opportunities for innovation across many industries. But with this incredible compute power, there's also great opportunity for possibilities of bad actors. And we can't ignore the potential here. And perhaps one of the most serious challenges that quantum computers provide is the capability to crack open today's standards of encryption for data protection. Data is constantly traveling to and from various endpoints, including edge devices in our digital way of life here. And the encryption that we've relied on for many years that's currently protecting this critical data simply cannot withstand the power of quantum computers. Next slide. And as we consider the ever-evolving ecosystem of cybersecurity, as well as just digital technologies in general, it's easy to think that quantum is far off. It's a distant problem that doesn't need to be addressed today, but that couldn't be further from the truth. We know that our data today is already vulnerable. You may be aware of the common threat called steal now, decrypt later, or store now, decrypt later, as you may have heard it. And this is a critical threat for our data that is important to businesses and customers. Anything from financial information, intellectual property, health records, state secrets, and more is highly valuable. And if this highly valuable data has any sort of shelf life, it is a perfect target for folks to steal, bad actors to steal, hold on to it, and wait until they've got the quantum compute power to simply crack it open in a matter of moments. So not only is SNDL a real threat and reason to act today to solve for the quantum problem, but we also see cryptography in use everywhere in our networks and across devices today. And the cryptography that's currently used is highly vulnerable, as we've said. And it's estimated that about 20 billion devices are leveraging this cryptography today, and therefore are highly vulnerable to quantum computing. And as we consider the quantum computing power applied to edge devices, there's the added challenge of navigating the problem with limited compute power. We'll talk about that a little bit more in today's presentation. And if you see in the news, many of you may have brought you here today, there are constant advances in quantum computing capabilities. Countries across the globe are working towards it, and you'll see qubit counts continue to grow higher as many nations put forward on a very regular basis their advancements toward reaching a quantum computer that can crack our cryptography. It's a very real threat. People are really actively working towards it, and it's something that we're very aware of and that we want folks to be aware of, which is part of the reason why we do these webinars. So thanks for being here today. And as we go into the next slide, I just want to showcase one opportunity where we had the chance to share a little bit more about the quantum threat at a larger scale. We're very honored to have been a part of Time Magazine's groundbreaking coverage on the quantum computing risks and potential there. You can check it out online or pick up a copy. You can read about our co-founder and COO, Skip Zanzeri, discussing quantum computers and the potential that they hold, as well as the potential for threat and creating new dilemmas. Now let's get started. I'll turn things over to John to share his expertise and perspectives in considering post-quantum protection for edge and cloud communications.
Thank you, Meg. It's a delight to join the QSecure team today, as it's been a delight to be your partner in tackling some of the nation's most difficult security challenges. When I joined Amazon a few years ago, I knew I'd be innovating on behalf of our defense and national security customers, but I didn't know that innovation would entail qubits, entanglement, and quantum resilient communications. So I have to admit, my familiarity with quantum technologies was tied to Ant-Man's adventures in the Marvel universe. But thanks to great Americans at QSecure and very, very long conversations and lessons from Shadow, I might be able to pick out the fantasy from reality, at least in the realm of post-quantum communications. Over the last year, AWS has partnered with QSecure to deliver cutting-edge technologies to our defense customers. As a partner, QSecure has truly delivered. They were selected for AWS's Accelerated Development Program and blazed the trail from start to finish, completing the program in record time with zero remediation. So I'd like to congratulate QSecure on today's announcement that they achieved AWS partner validation and public sector partner designations. In the lab, they delivered quantum resilient communications between AWS edge devices and the cloud. In the field, they're delivering quantum resilient communications to the very edge of the tactical envelope and in the most austere conditions. But what are we talking about when we say edge? Next slide, please. The edge to cloud continuum as a description of distributed computing and network infrastructure to bring cloud capabilities to the furthest reaches where data is collected, analyzed, and communicated. Delivering cloud capabilities to the edge aids in visualizing information, making decisions, and adapting to internal and external disruptions in real time. If we can begin on the right of this slide and work left, the cloud for AWS begins in our regions that are placed all over the world. At last count, there are 31 regions, including 89 availability zones where our data centers reside. Moving left, there are traditional on-premise data centers, some of which may include hybrid cloud capabilities. As we move away from the on-prem data centers, we start hitting the rugged edge. For the military, this could be aircraft, ships, field operations centers. Telecommunications networks use edge capabilities to deploy ultra low latency applications for your mobile computing needs. As we move further left, we see edge capabilities in network factories, refineries, and maintenance facilities. And even further left, we see the Internet of Things and connected sensors. Just this morning on the train into work, I overheard the conductors receive a radio report from a train side sensor as we passed by. So sort of the things that I've learned while working with QSecure. If we had space on this slide, we could even depict edge capabilities in outer space. Next slide, please. There are three main reasons that may dictate why you want to put your applications on premises. First, you might have latency sensitive applications. Some business critical applications are sensitive to latency and variability in latency. And businesses need those applications to run on premises to support either equipment and processes that are sensitive to that latency. In order to ensure smooth and predictable operations, to provide superior experience to end users, and to maintain a competitive advantage. Some examples include running on factory floors with automated operations in manufacturing, real-time patient diagnosis or medical imaging, and content and media streaming. Another reason for local data processing and data integrity. There's been an exponential increase in the data that's being generated by users and end devices, and data integrity is a key concern in locations that are bandwidth constrained. You have data-intensive workloads that collect and process hundreds of terabytes of data a day. Transmission of this large volume of data to the cloud is both wasteful and expensive. And transmitting these messages or data streams over long distances may also lead to package loss, resulting in data integrity problems. This would be good to process the data locally and to respond to real-time events and have better control in analyzing, backing up, and restoring the data. Finally, another application for the edge is data residency requirements. You may operate in a geographical jurisdiction where regulations dictate that data and infrastructure must reside in specific structures. Our national security and defense customers may have requirements from a classification perspective. And alternatively, you may have contracts that specify where data may be deployed. To deliver across this continuum, AWS delivers an array of edge capabilities. Next slide, please. At the center, earlier this year, AWS announced its modular data center is available to its Department of Defense customers. This is a self-contained unit, environmentally controlled physical enclosure that hosts racks of AWS Outpost and Snow family devices, which I'll cover in a second. Customers also have the option to use satellite communications for network connectivity. It is constructed using ruggedized containers that are designed and built for intermodal freight transport, so MDCs can be sent across different modes of transportation from ship to rail to truck. The MDCs are also air transportable using military cargo aircraft. AWS Outpost is a fully managed service that extends AWS infrastructure, services, APIs, and tools on premises for a hybrid cloud experience. Outposts are ideal for workloads that require low latency across on-prem systems, local data processing, data residency, and the migration of applications with local system interdependencies. Wavelength embeds AWS compute and storage within the telecommunication 5G networks. This provides mobile edge computing infrastructure for deploying, developing, and scaling ultra-low latency applications. So when application traffic from 5G devices reach application servers running on wavelength zones, they are not leaving the telecommunications network. A snowball on the top right moves, we can either move data, backup, archive, IoT data, health record data, analytic data sets, and media content to the cloud. In a snowball compute optimized, the devices allow us to bring cloud services to the edge for those particular requirements. Below that, the AWS Snowcone is a small, rugged, and secure device offering edge computing, data storage, and data transfer on the go in austere environments with little or no connectivity. Speaking of austere environments, an AWS Snowcone was recently deployed to the International Space Station. Snowblade is designed to provide AWS compute, storage, and other hybrid services in remote locations, including denied, disrupted, intermittent, and limited environments for the Department of Defense. It is the first AWS Snow family device designed to meet military ruggedization standards and enables defense customers to run their operations at the edge that are subject to extreme temperatures, vibrations, and shocks. We're even further pushing the envelope, recently announcing partnerships with Booz Allen Hamilton and Kloss to deliver edge technologies in remote and austere environments. So Pete, I hope that was helpful for your viewers. Now over to you.
Thanks, Hoss. Great working with the pros at AWS, and hearing all the stories from the Army made me that much more thankful I was in the Air Force, my friend. And it's a real joy to see the folks that we have here, friends and guys and gals that I've either been in combat with or worked around the world with. So it's great to have the crowd here. Can't tell you guys how great it is. Next slide, please, Pat, to work with Hoss and Sanjay and Frank, the Snow Father, and just watch pros in action. Hoss, it's great working with you guys. And then likewise, the rest of the crowd that our company has managed to work with on a professional basis and team with, like Dell, that works hand in glove with AWS, and Red Hat as well. It's really a joy to watch pros get after nation's problems. If you haven't studied what we've done in the past, or been a part of it, or looked at any other recordings, or looked at qsecure.com, you pretty much have figured out, and you can quickly figure out, that the quantum computing world is rapidly moving on us. What we thought was a decade away is rapidly moving into years or months, and obviously we're focused on adversaries' use of that. So the slides you see here are the possibilities for a quantum speed up that we already see in action. So in this particular case, we're looking at Shor's algorithm as what the National Security Memorandum 8 and 10, and then the Office of Management and Budget have talked about as the fault-tolerant quantum computer really comes into a cryptanically relevant quantum computer, and how a noisy intermediate scale quantum computer can change the breaking of an asymmetric key. And it's all about those asymmetric keys. In this particular place, you see either new entangled quantum processing or chips that adds a speed up of operation. It works around decoherence, but I can put multiple qubits in play. Number two is where I think most of the things are happening. And by the way, right after the OMB in November put out hey, this is what we're going to do to meet national security memorandums, and it's legislatively driven regulatory compliance. A month after that, 19 scientists in China put out a variational quantum paper that says this is how we're going to break. They didn't use a traveling salesman. They went straight at how we break RSA 1024. It caused quite a stir. in the physics and math world, and the jury's still out, but a lot of folks say that is a possibility. But it's basically exactly the IEEE paper that I got published in February on variational quantum factoring and how we use classical and quantum computers together. And it basically lets quantum computers do what they do while classical computers do what they want to do. By the way, we see perpetual growth as you look at number 3, the more efficient quantum algorithms getting around some of those engineering constraints and allow us to get after some of those complex algorithms that a quantum computer can do, and the non-polynomial math. And then the last part is just a growth across classical and quantum, where we see a reverse multiplication in those hybrid constrained solvers. We'll see an increase in the efficiency of classical computers as we do that. So if you're wondering if it's going fast, it's a fast moving world. And I thought afterburners were fast, but turns out Quantu go quite a bit faster in this world. So next slide, Pat. That just should show you that the store now, steal now, collect now, harvest now, decrypt later is not as late as we think. It's coming along fast. So what's important for us as we work with pros like Haas and the rest of our whole of government getting after what is indeed really a national problem, we've got to understand, our team and the pros that we work with, that what you're facing in a security challenge world is you're going to have some compliance and regulatory pressures that come along with how you do work in the federal government. You've got the National Security Memorandums 8 and 10, a lot of legislation that comes with that, a lot of financial responsibilities. So we're talking on the federal side, but it also goes to finance and healthcare on the federal side as well as commercial. So you have those that you have to deal with. You also have an evolving cryptographic need. And remember, for our nation, it takes about a decade for us to roll from one set of encryption to another. So you've got to move really fast to keep from being threatened by what we see as the rapid growth of a quantum computer. By the way, you got old junk. We always have. All my combat rotations, I guarantee you, Haas's and a lot of the other pros that we work with, every time we went to combat, we always had end-of-life stuff that we had to breathe new life in, look for agility, look for resiliency, and make sure we were bringing the best we had for our nation to the forefront of what is mosaic warfare. So you've got some legacy systems. How do we get you resiliency, agility, and modernization on old stuff so you can use it to the best of our nation's needs across the world, in essence? And then the last piece is, when I talk about first mover advantage, I want the United States, I want what we do, both federally and commercially, to be a first mover. The adversary always has a vote. So in this particular case, aside from competition internally, let's look at the external competition that comes with this internationally. We want to make sure we're not just playing defense. We're built securely, but we're ready to look at attack monitoring and proper defensive modes that give you that true resiliency and quite frankly, the capability to move faster than an adversary would. So that forward strategic thinking with very intentional purpose across all these challenges is important. Next slide, please, Pat. And that's what we're trying to do here, recognizing that zero trust has a lot of built-in, baked-in pieces to it. When you look at a cryptonically relevant quantum computer and what it can do and the capability that we're trying to bring for our nation's sake, we've got to add a post-quantum side of zero trust architecture, which means some of those paradigms that we've come to include with zero trust need to have a quantum resilient part to them, which means the entropy, that low PSRK that you have right now, needs to have a higher entropy, bigger number with some optical depth to it and give you a lot more keys rather than that one key that you have that's protecting that one board that you have or a PKI card that you have. We need multiple level 8, level 6, level 5 entropy keys that we can roll and push rapidly to keep that protection for our nation and for your business. The next part is, in a post-quantum cryptography, the NIST has come out with a standard where we move away from what was a vulnerable set of cryptography before, where we now have, actually Kyber was announced. And as we see those cryptography, the math guys fight on math type planes, we're given an optical lattice, this one, so you have some entropy depth associated with it rather than just a long number that we can break. Now we see that too will probably be broken. What we want to do is lay in whatever the current standard is and give you options. And then the next piece is when we give that, recognizing that instead of taking a decade, let's make it a matter of moments where we can give you crypto agility. If we have an algorithm gets exposed, let's give you that adaptive crypto agility, let you go those upgrades even faster and keep the edge for what you have. That work on a backwards compatible existing infrastructure without having to upgrade every single laptop or edge device actually keeps all of your stuff in a post-quantum protected world. And that's what zero trust post-quantum architecture should look like. Next slide, please, Pat. When we do that, there's a lot of ideal states that we'd like to get at. And by the way, when you have old end of life stuff, you never get an ideal state. You always go after the ideal state and you go to war, either commercially or actually go to war for our nation with less than an ideal state. We're trying to give you as close as we can to that. When you look at those left side there, disconnected solutions where I want that post-quantum cryptography and I want to be able to get what our nation said is the next. I need an entropy source more than just a pseudo-random key. I need the ability to be crypto agile and resilient and move with threats and what the bandwidth and latency requirements are where I'm at the edge. I need to move keys where they're supposed to be. A lot of players doing a lot of things, and sometimes they scale, sometimes they don't, sometimes they meet one need. What we're trying to do is give you a simple, fully orchestrated solution that gets that end-to-end network solution in your hands as quick as you can, i.e. it's standards-based, NIST and FIPS approved, it's strong, it's safe, it's proven, our nation is behind it. It's ready for you right now. And if there's one thing you take out of this is we're ready for you right now. We are TRL4, rapidly moving to 5 and 6 in standards, ready to get on your networks and give you the option to use this for what you need to meet the ideal state that you know our nation's after. So that's the biggest thing you can take out of this is a ready deployment. Instead of doing something later, you can have this in your hands right now. The next part is meet your government's needs, meet your customers' needs with the policy driven that you think is right for your needs and the ideal state that you're going after. We're giving you that with our UI and UX of what we have. And then I hate playing defense. And if we build it securely, that's not enough. We got to give you the ability to monitor where attacks are coming from and actively defend against those. And I want to give it to you in a moment's notice so you're ready to respond to what an adversary is going to do or what competition would do. So you keep your data safe and you keep Mosaic warfare at the leading forefront of what we need to do to target bad guys. Next slide, please, Pat. With that being said, now I'm turning over to the other really smart guy here after Haas rolled in. Dr. Garrison Buss, over to you. And plus, you'll bring the overall average age down in this too, my friend.
Well, thank you very much, Pete. And really appreciate you kind of introing the ready deployment that we have for all of you folks today. Next slide, Pat. So between Haas and Pete, I think you heard a lot about the landscape as well as the myriad value propositions that our solution brings via our QProtect platform. So I'm showing you here, again, a very high level notional diagram of our platform. It starts off on the top with the Quark and our quantum secured layer. The Quark serves as our central management server. So all of the policy for all of those things that Pete was discussing earlier, the crypto agility, key rotation, et cetera, is configured via the Quark, and it allows you to do that securely via our quantum secured layer. Moving into how we actually protect your devices. On the left, you're seeing our solution that allows you to protect your secured web applications. This is for end user devices such as phones, laptops, and other mobile devices that connect via the open internet to your web server. On the right, you can see our secure application to application communications for your server to server, service to service workloads that you might be employing, again, within your data center or traditionally within your perimeter. Next slide, please, Pat. So again, as Pete said, what's really neat about our solution is that it's ready to go today. And it's purchasable starting next month in early July from Arrow or Imix, depending on if you're commercial or federal. And you can see exactly what you would get from this service. On the top right, you're seeing, again, a little bit more in-depth showing of how we're going to protect your mobile applications, again, either on a laptop, phone, anything, web browser, et cetera, via our Q proxy and our Q agents. By the way, this is a zero install, zero change in experience for the end user customer. It's totally transparent. They won't even know that it's there, but you have, again, an additional quantum layer of protection on top of your regular TLS or SSL connection. On the bottom, you're seeing our secure application to application communications, again, delivered via our Qubit proxies for your service to service workloads. This, again, is just letting you get your feet wet with how you can get started with post-quantum protection today. And all of this is delivered, and you can see on the left, through our white glove deployment, and the price for your starting and on-premise deployment, all of the licensing, all of the hardware included, services and installation wrapped around it for $550,000. Next slide, please. So really, how do we fit into your network today? So what we're showing you here is a high-level diagram of a hybrid cloud network architecture that is then connected out to the edge via the cloud on a PLC, or not shown here is a gateway that could also be in the data path. And so I'm just going to start kind of in the upper right and then move outwards from there. So you can see again that the end user device in any imagination of whether it's connected again via web server to the cloud or to your on-premise devices, that connection is secured via our quantum secure layer, riding within TLS or SSL. So you retain all of the protection that you would today. We are only additive on top of that protection and providing you with quantum resiliency against that store now, decrypt later. So if you have very sensitive information that's heading out to devices in the field, this is protection that you can use today, deployed again as an agent or an SDK or proxy, depending on the compute resources available at that endpoint. Moving back into the left-hand side, right, this is sort of the cloud component to that hybrid cloud architecture. Also connected in this case to the PLC via our Qubit proxy, provided that there's sufficient resources to run on the PLC. Otherwise, this proxy can run on a gateway. As you heard from Haas, we've already completed a successful edge demonstration with their Snow platform out in Reston. If you'd like to learn more about that, please get in contact with us and we can give you more detail about how we can perform something similar for your use case. Moving back out of the cloud down into the data center, you can provide, again, a contiguous protection from any of those cloud applications into either your middleware or other internal applications today. Again, all facilitated via our quantum secure layer and our mesh proxy architecture. Kind of coming back all the way down into the bottom left, you see there the cork, which is, again, facilitating all of this. And you can read about on the left-hand side, all of the things offered to you in the control plane that you can administrate through Quark, such as secure registration and authentication policy, algorithm and key length control for crypto agility, and you can set communications and access policy. So you can either allow or deny connections being made between any of these internal applications. You also get insight into your traffic and pattern monitoring. We provide you with zero trust foundations. All of these proxies are registered and mutually authenticated with the Quark so that you know exactly what proxies are there, and you have to ensure that they are registered, again, securely, so there's human in the loop for that portion of it. Finally, we're able to take a look at defense measures and recommendations depending on the traffic patterns that you are seeing. Next slide, please. And with that, I will turn it back over to Meg.
Thanks so much, Garrison. And to our wonderful presenters, thank you, everybody. We do encourage you at this point, we'll move into Q&A in just a moment. So if you've got any questions at all, please do drop them into the chat. We'll do our best to answer them all here or follow up with you offline. Before we jump in, give everybody a minute to offer up some questions. We do want to invite you to our next webinar, which will be in August, on securing financial services in the quantum and AI age, insights into post-quantum cryptography. It's going to be a great one. Highly recommend it for all who want to attend and learn a little bit more. If you've got any questions, just to reemphasize, please drop them in the chat or feel free to reach out to us. We'll have contact information in a moment. But we'll get started here with Q&A. We've got our first question that we want to see a little bit more. Pete, can you speak to a little bit more of the rapid movement around government mandates and just a little bit more of the motion that you're starting to see with the government, US government, beginning to push protection for post-quantum and maybe where it might be going over the next couple of months?
Yeah, sure. Perfect question there for me, especially since I just see my video and I probably look like I'm in the witness protection program. So great question there. And it's good to see the folks on the line here that I know from Northrop, Raytheon, some of our other partners and from national labs to asking the right questions at the right time. When you look at the National Security Memorandum 8 and then 10, now they basically have a lot of thou shalt nots. Thou shalt not use end-of-life equipment. Thou shalt not use cryptography that's already proven to be broken. And then the other piece is move over into a post-quantum resiliency modernization world that is getting away from what's an asymmetric key grouping that's threatened into something that allows you a resiliency or a modernization capability right now, even though you don't have the money to upgrade every single laptop, every single server, every single high performance computer out there. I want you to build in a quantum transition for resiliency, agility, and modernization. This is the path to give you that opportunity and then optimize it for your solution. What we see is we talked about those 4 possibilities for quantum speed up and an asymmetric key breaking. Give yourself layers of protection or give yourself an adoption where you can put this in the hands of those subject matter experts that can start using this for your organization, whether it's commercially, federally, or whatever you're going to do across whole of government, because it's really a whole of government problem that we're dealing with. And that's one of the great things that I like working with Haas and AWS about is they are already out to the edge. They're right in the middle and they're getting out to the edge because the edge is where that mosaic warfare is going to happen. In island chains that are disconnected on edges of space and the different orbits or inclination that may or may not have connectivity until they're back in nadir. Those are the type of things that we want to get after so you're ready at a moment's notice to have connectivity at the speed you need without any latency baked into it. So Haas, I'll add anything to you too, because I know with the modular data centers, you want that data right when it's available. Anything else to add? Because AWS has got a lot of that going on as well. What we're trying to do is when you do get that connection, we want to make sure you have the quantum secure layer over it that keeps it protected and keeps it out of the eyes of people that want to steal it, store it, collect it, and then decrypt it for their use later on. Haas, anything to add as I lean into that?
No, Shadow, what excites me about the partnership with QSecure is we are definitely pushing the envelope further and further out in the edge. Whether we're thinking about space, whether we're thinking about the Arctic, or whether we're thinking where the next conflict may occur, we are really partnering to find how do we secure that data where it's needed.
Yeah, I concur. And I love that we're looking at, obviously, my part of that whole thing is the federal operations side where we see first movers because we've seen legislation. We see congressional acts. We see the national security memorandums. And then we see Office of Management and Budget, the guys with the checkbook saying, we're not going to pay you if you don't do this. This gives you a chance to get in there and say, we are coming into compliance. We are getting after what the nation has set us to do. And then, by the way, that whole of government piece hits our banking, it hits our healthcare, it hits our insurance, it'll hit your mortgage too when it comes to that same thing. So when you're fighting for that, this is a whole of, and by the way, infrastructure, it'll hit our national power grid as well. So those are the type of things we need to lean into and be ready because this post-quantum transition is upon us. Meg, I hope that answered your questions.
That's perfect, Pete. Love the insight. Thank you so much. This one will be for Garrison. We got a question from the crowd. Can you speak a little bit more to the estimated timeline for quantum computers being online with enough power to crack a weaker encryption? particularly single and triple DES?
Yeah, sure. So, so with quantum computing, the idea is that actually it's the asymmetric keys, or sorry, the asymmetric algorithms and cryptosystems that are vulnerable. DES and triple DES are the kind of symmetric block ciphers that are used to encrypt after some asymmetric key exchange has been performed. So with single DES, there's a variety of both brute force and also specialized methods of kind of getting to the key. Often that can take a day or less. And so single DES is certainly not secure enough. Triple DES, properly implemented now, is typically considered secure, again, with the caveat being the proper implementation of that thing. I believe it has something in the 160-ish bit strength for brute force operations on that. So I would say for both of those, really, the attack from a quantum computer would be Grover's that can theoretically reduce the bit strength to half of, again, what is known today. And so for triple DES, right, the equivalent operation would bring it down to half the key strength, and then would be considered insecure, I think, by today's standards. For asymmetric cryptography, basically there's no equivalent scaling out where you only get half the bit strength of the quantum attack, or with the quantum attack. And so really, it actually doesn't matter how much longer you make that key length. So if you went from RSA 2048 to RSA 4096, in the quantum realm, because of the way that it scales, you don't actually get really any more protection, and its effective bit strength will drop to 0 once we have a CRQC. So again, really there's a difference between the asymmetric and the symmetric portion of what quantum computers, at least known today, are able to do. And that's why QSecure is so focused on data in motion, because that is the portion of your network that is using the asymmetric cryptography and relying upon it for its protection. Symmetric key is typically used for data at rest. And if you're using today's standards, AES 256, you are considered, at least for the moment, quantum safe. And so too, right, the symmetric block cipher being used after the asymmetric handshake is done today is considered secure. So really, it's that asymmetric component of the data in transit that you need to be aware of now.
Perfect. Thanks, Garrison. Really appreciate it. All right, Dr. John DeRosa, we've got a question for you from the crowd. Hoping you can share a little bit more insight into what Amazon and AWS are hearing from customers about moving to a quantum resilient environment, considering both federal and commercial.
So as a whole, Amazon AWS is certainly involved in post-quantum cryptography and moving along and working with the community to develop solutions in line with the standards for cryptography and encryption nationally. I can speak only to the customers that I have interacted with. In fact, the federal customers that I've interacted with is how I met QSecure as a company, where they were asking for us to whether or not we could develop a platform where they could test post-quantum cryptography. And that's how I met QSecure, and that's how our relationship has grown. Commercially, also because I'm dealing with defense and national security customers, most of the startups that I've interacted with are supporting deliveries to federal customers. And so they recognize the threat landscape, and as a startup, they're trying to position their capability in a secure manner to be able to respond in that threat environment when it occurs.
Thank you so much.
Meg, I'll add a little of that, what Haas described. I love the way Dr. John Selby goes by Gouda, John Hopkins, PhD, tech director on our team, described this when he was up with Haas and Frank and the AWS team visiting some customers that were asking those tough questions. It's a developing domain solution that if you wait until you have the perfect solution, it'll be too late and the adversary has the lead. So when you develop the domain solution that Haas is talking about, we're looking at, and that's why we're trying to give you that first mover advantage. Get this in your hands. There's an old famous, as an old boxer myself, everybody has a plan until you get hit in the mouth. So let us give you that plan. Let's get ready for this. Let's lean into it, remediate the parts that we see that you want to adopt, that you don't see enough resiliency or agility in. Let's harden those pieces as we come back in and we put a plan of action and milestones together against the authority to operate and compliance or continuous authority to operate. The adversary always has a vote. What we want to do is we want to lean into that, allow that agility and resilience and modernization to be part of your solution, and then you can adopt it how you see fit best for your organization. Some people have, like the earlier question we had on DES or triple DES, some legacy equipment are still using that. So let's try to put a quantum secure layer over it to add that protection that you don't have right now that you know you're vulnerable with. Other players that are leaning into the current Kyber solution, you may not have the same length of keys with the processor you have, so you won't go to 1024. You'll stay at 512. But let's give you that option to get into the optical lattice that gives you a quantum resiliency. Then we start asking the subject matter experts across the rest of government that does hardening to apply this to NIST and FIPS and make sure it matches what the government's going to work with. That's why it's so great to work with pros like Haas. Dell is doing the same thing. Red Hat's doing the same thing. We're modifying our software infrastructure and the hardware going along with it to match this threat, so that that initial plan we had when we started this isn't the only plan we go with.
Thanks, Pete. I want to pass it over to Garrison for a moment just to build on a little bit, Pete, what you're saying. Question from the crowd around crypto agility. Can you say a little bit more as we consider the evolving standards?
Yeah, sure thing. So, we came into this eyes wide open. Obviously, NIST has not yet standardized on the algorithms that, coming very soon, but has not yet standardized on the algorithms that they're going to use, at least for key encapsulation. Again, Crystal Kyber right now is their application, or the crypto system that they're planning on standardizing come early 2024. So it is impending. But I will say too that they've kept other algorithms also in the running. I think that it makes sense only because you want to have some ability to have an orthogonal primitive that you can use if the type of algorithm that you're using proves to be impacted by quantum computing or by conventional attack. So what they have right now is Crystal Kyber is a lattice-based frontrunner. They also have 3 other algorithms that they're continuing to attempt to standardize. And what that means for us is that we give you the ability to implement post-quantum via Kyber now. We also give you the ability to implement any of the other round 4 finalists in the same place as Kyber. And we allow you to do this in a way that you can hot swap those algorithms. So you don't actually need to go back in and have a patch or do something in your CI/CD. You can simply just go into our management console and say, oh, hey, here's all the proxies that I had running. I have Crystal Kyber right as the default now. And then I'm going to, pending some vulnerability being found, flip all of those over into, for example, MacLease or HPC. So that you, from 5 minutes after that headline comes out in the New York Times or wherever, you can now be on a different secure algorithm that hasn't been impacted measurably by whatever new vulnerability has been found.
Thanks, Garrison. And this question is for you and Pete from the crowd. Question about, what does it really mean for organizations to consider setting up internal skill sets to bridge the gap when it comes to transitioning post-quantum? Can you speak a little bit about how organizations might be able to prepare themselves?
Sure. I will say, the idea that we have with QSecure is such that you don't have to upskill necessarily for PQC. So right now, in the same way that you don't necessarily consider, the underlying math that's being performed when you have your ECDH, ECC running for SSL or TLS, we want to make it that easy for you to be able to implement PQC. And we believe that our platform does actually make it that easy, because again, what we've designed here is a system that fits over what you already have today. So in software, you are able to upgrade all of those existing connections to PQC just via basically a few lines of code and some configuration in our control plane. So if you were to do this yourself, I think the answer is, yeah, you might need to try and get familiar, right, with the changing landscape that exists for both open source and for, right, the types of algorithms that are being used, and what the trade-offs of all of those things are. Versus, again, our system makes it really, really simple to do that. We allow you to, again, swap them out and retain all of the existing protection that you have today, which is also something that's very difficult to do on your own. So really what we try to do is make it simple and easy for organizations to implement this quickly and at scale. Pete?
Yeah, you nailed it. It's Brendan's question is spot on to the point where we talk to players that have current CISSP certification, and really smart, forward-leaning players going, Shadow, or am I going to eventually have to be a QISSP? Well, yeah, before we ever had CISSP, we were figuring out how do we make a CISSP. So yeah, when we adapt and let subject matter experts that have knowledge of existing IT infrastructures and edge capability and how we're going to use that cloud, hybrid, edge-to-edge infrastructure, we will have to consider the post-quantum nature of what we're laying on to existing systems. So yeah, to your point, exactly like you asked on that question, we are going to have to consider how we put that in place so it keeps the agility, resiliency that our nation needs. And we're trying to offer that right now. And so there's other parts, if you remember back to Garrison's slide where we have our core laid in and you have the Q everywhere and Q network side of that, it's across the entire infrastructure, what you would consider a compliant world of either a continuous authority operate on a Kubernetes type platform that puts this all the way out to the edge, all the way to the existing capability we have for NSA type 1, where we put quantum secure layer inside NSA type 1 bulk encryption. All of those are necessary, and we need an implementation of what will become a standard that still allows us to be resilient while that domain solution's coming out. So great questions. I love working with pros. It's awesome to see these questions, and they're hard. If they were easy questions or it was an easy job, I don't think any of us would be here. We're trying to lean into things and make a difference for our nation.
Thanks, Pete and Garrison. Got one more question for us today. I want to shed a little bit more insight on the idea of deploying post-quantum while keeping current encryption. And if you can speak a little bit to latency and performance as well. I've got a couple of questions around that. Pass this to Garrison.
Sure, and I'll try and cover that in the next couple of minutes quickly so that we can end on time. So yes, deploying PQC while keeping your existing encryption. So this is, again, as I mentioned earlier, we were really looking at the landscape holistically. And this is a recommendation delivered by NIST, right? Such that you have a kind of double wrapped architecture to your system. You have your TLS or SSL, just as you do today, right? Providing you with the best-in-class existing protection for data in transit, again, via that asymmetric key cryptography and PKI that we're using today. In addition, right, we're providing our own, you can think of this as a tunnel within, and you can think about many different examples of this, but this is end-to-end encryption, essentially, right? Whether you think about this as similar to DRM, right? When you're viewing Netflix, there's a secondary layer of encryption within the connection that's established, ensuring that you are the person who is supposed to receive that material. And again, there's a similar notion here, except what we've done is that we have made that second layer of encryption post-quantum, and again, easily deliverable to basically anywhere in your network. And I guess the second question here, and I see this from Ron, is the current NIST signatures they're massive. And what I'll say to that is we don't actually have our own signature, as you're querying here. We have our own method of doing mutual authentication this is a KDC architecture. It's been around for a very long time. You can think about this as a Kerberos, or rather Kerberos-like. We don't actually use Kerberos, but it's that same idea where you can provide mutual authentication of both the cork in this case and the end user device or the proxy without needing to use that signature. And so then you again are able to support these more resource constrained devices.
Probably worthwhile to Hoss, with our recent work that we did with AWS, it got to some of the latency questions. I know AWS was looking at it too. As we go from TRL 4 to 5 and 6 with all the hardening, it might be worthwhile to get AWS's mindset on the latency, because you guys care about the edge work too. I know we set up some significant testing on that, and we have more to go, but I know AWS is all over that, because the need for speed is very important when it comes to an edge device. So Hoss, any thoughts on yours from what our recent work with you guys did?
No, Shadow, personally, some of the requirements for latency. We have, customers will have concern about whether or not, when you double wrap the encryption, as Garrison described, will that affect the latency associated with the encryption that we have there? So these are definitely areas where we're continuing to experiment with, both with you and internally, to understand the impact, particularly because of the impact of cloud capabilities where latency is concerned.
Yeah, you nailed it. And that's, I say the words over and over again, the agility piece. If you run into a low latent environment or a bandwidth constrained, think first and second island chain world. Think about where you're in a disadvantaged user capability. That's the agility that we're trying to bake into this. So you go to a lower bandwidth to keep the weapons envelope, the ID, the rules of engagement, all the things that we're used to working with on a federal side and in a military fashion or an intelligence community. How do I get this data in the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capability out to other players? That's where we're looking for that agility and resiliency baked into this, so you can choose the key, still put a quantum secure layer over them. That's where the maturation, or what I would call operational payloading, really makes a difference as we put this in subject matter expert hands. And I know we're over, but you've got my email contact there. We can go over, especially if you're in the government, we can go over the results of what we already had with you guys on one-on-one sessions, or you can get with us and our whole team, and we can operationalize that payload opportunity for you to lean into this. So you are a first mover and you're getting after what OMB, one, has told you to do, and two, what customers are asking you to do. So any further questions there, you got our contact information. Hoss, I can't say thank you enough for being here, for bringing the pros of AWS to the forefront of a national need. And it's great to have everybody online. Meg, I'll hand it over to you for the wrap up.
Perfect. Thanks, Pete. And thank you all for attending today. It was a delight to be with you here for this time. As Pete said, please do reach out. We would love to connect, learn more about what the work you're doing and how we might be able to help. Please do, feel free to reach out with questions. We're also happy to set up a demo, and we hope to see you all at the next webinar in August. Thanks so much.